Channel Sports Central will be going over a college football game preview and prediction on a big SEC matchup coming up in Week 11, and that's going to be between Georgia and Missouri. And Georgia on one side, they lost to Florida, of course, last week, which that was a pretty bad loss for Georgia. They did not look very good in that matchup, but all around, they've got a chance to turn things around against a Missouri team that's really been struggling lately. Missouri has gotten a couple of good wins so far this season, but they've started off 2-3. And honestly, Missouri, this could be a huge win for them if they can pull off a huge upset here. But we're going to be going over a full preview and prediction on this game here today, starting out with your team trends. Last game, Georgia lost to Florida 28-44. And that was just last week. Of course, Florida looked really good in that game. And even though Georgia got off to a decent start, the quarterback situation was just a mess for Georgia last week. And that was a big reason why they were not able to pull off a win in the end. But as far as it goes for Missouri, they lost to Florida a couple of weeks ago, 17-41. They did not have a game last week, obviously because two teams can't play Florida in the same week. But Missouri did lose to Florida as well, 17-41 in Week 9. For the winning streaks for both these teams, no team actually has a win in the streak right now. Both teams have one-game losing streaks. Georgia's 4-2 and the 12th ranked team in the nation right now. Meanwhile, for Missouri, they're 2-3, once again with a one-game losing streak. This game's going to be on Saturday, November 14th, noon Eastern in Columbia, Missouri. So, of course, Missouri will be your home team for this matchup. Spread currently says Georgia by 11.5. ESPN FPI's got Georgia 84%. And then the Vegas predictions got Georgia pretty heavily here, 36-17 being the final score prediction right now. So Georgia is favored here by a moderate amount. Of course, the ESPN FPI's got Georgia pretty heavily there, 84%. Is the prediction, but the spread, 11.5 point spread is really not all that much. That's basically like predicting a team is going to win by a couple of touchdowns, so it's not all that much, but Georgia is favored nonetheless. The biggest prediction, though, is going on the Georgia side pretty heavily there with the 36-17 final score prediction as of now. Here's your stat comparison for this game. Of course, Georgia's got 29 points per game right now, 20 points allowed. We got 209 pass yards a game, 173 rush yards a game, then 262 pass yards allowed, then 82 rush yards allowed. So the rushing defense for the Bulldogs has actually been excellent all season. It's just the passing defense that has not been very good for Georgia. If you look at the Bulldogs last week, Kyle Trask absolutely had a heyday because of how good, for one, how good he is and how good he played. But for two, this Georgia secondary just did not perform at all like how we expected them to. And 262 yards on average is not going to help you, especially for the passing category. But rushing defense and the defensive line is all around pretty good for Georgia, only allowing 82 rush yards on average so far this season. For Missouri, they got 22 points per game, 33 points allowed. They got 257 pass yards a game, 127 rush yards a game. And then for yards allowed, they got 263 passing and then 131 rushing. So for Missouri, they're just not scoring enough points. They've only got 22 points per game so far, which is a pretty terrible stat line, considering they are allowing 11 points more than that with 33. But yeah, Missouri's decent on the passing game. So far, they've been able to average 257 pass yards a game, which Basilek, of course, their quarterback, has been halfway decent so far this season. He's put up 1,100 yards, along with 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. So his touchdown to interception ratio is pretty good, but his yardage is pretty good. I will say that. Over 1,100 yards so far this season. That's pretty good through 5 games. But once again, all around for Missouri, they've just got to fix up their defense for one. They're allowing a lot of points. 33 points per game is not going to help you win any games, especially big ones like this is going to be for Missouri. But moving on to your key points, of course, Georgia's got some questionable spots based off of last week's game for sure heading into this one. Of course, you got Stetson Bennett, who, he's been a decent quarterback. He hasn't been a Heisman contender by any means. He's put up 1,100 yards so far this season with 8 touchdowns, but 6 interceptions. His touchdown to interception ratio right now is 8-6. That is pretty close to being a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which would be terrible. Usually a good touchdown to interception ratio would be like a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1. Stetson Bennett's currently going basically at a 4-to-3, which is not what you want for sure. So Stetson Bennett's got to definitely fix that up if Georgia's going to be a playoff team this season, which, he played pretty well. It just was that Florida game, which was really sloppy for him. But Missouri also has some consistency issues that they got to fix up if they're going to be a good team. Once again, they had a couple of good wins so far this season against Kentucky and LSU, but otherwise they got blown out to Tennessee before. They got blown out to Alabama, and they also got blown out to Florida. So, it's been a tough schedule for Missouri, though. Don't get me wrong there. They've had to play Alabama, and they've had to play LSU, which LSU's not very good this season, but they've also had to play Florida, which Florida's a top 6 team right now in the nation. So Missouri has had a tough schedule. Don't get me wrong there, but I mean, still, it's just a consistency issue right now for the Tigers. But this is a crucial game for both these teams moving forward. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, for Georgia, if they're wanting to be a playoff contender, an SEC West or SEC East champion, I think Georgia's got to run the table now. I mean, for Florida being a one-loss team, and also Florida's now got the tiebreaker advantage over Georgia, this is going to be a crucial game. And the next month or so is going to be extremely crucial for Georgia if they're going to want to win the SEC East, because if Georgia doesn't win the SEC East, I think there's no way that Georgia makes it to the college football playoff. Because, I mean, the only way that you're really going to make it to the playoff is if you win your conference. And for Georgia and their chances now of making it to the championship game in Atlanta, I just don't really see it happening because, I mean, you lost to Florida. Once again, we were talking about last week how important of a game it was between Florida and Georgia. And for Georgia to lose that game, that was very detrimental. But nonetheless, I mean, I think for Missouri as well, this is an important game, especially if Missouri's wanting to still get to a good postseason position, which is still possible. But do expect a moderate scoring game here. I think both teams and both offenses should put up a decent amount of points here. Nonetheless, here's my prediction. I've got Georgia actually blowing out Missouri in this one. And I mean, I went back and forth on this. I was thinking maybe it would be a little bit of a closer game, but I think Georgia's going to come back this week and absolutely blow out Missouri. I think, especially after coming off of a loss like they did against Florida, I mean, it can do one of two things. One, Georgia's going to be sluggish this week, and they're going to almost be like hungover, and that could end up turning into a bad game for Georgia. But the other option is that Georgia becomes motivated off of that loss, and they have a big game, which I think that possibility is going to be more likely. I think we see Georgia come out of the gate and just get a couple of big touchdowns. Halftime score is going to be 24-7. We're going to see a Georgia lead there at the half, but in the final, 41-13 is going to be your final score. Bulldogs will end up winning this game by a decent margin. I think Georgia is definitely the more talented team here, and I think especially if Stetson Bennett can come back and have a good game, I wouldn't be surprised to see Georgia blow out Missouri here, especially considering Missouri has just been so inconsistent so far this season. Probability is going to be 80% towards the Georgia side. I'm honestly giving Missouri a pretty low chance to win this matchup. I really don't see it happening. I mean, Missouri's got a chance, I think, to stay close. I mean, there's a chance that they possibly give Georgia some competition in the first couple of the quarters, but in the end, I think Georgia gets the win here pretty easily in the end. Once again, your final score for me is going to be 41-13. But then again, let me know your thoughts and comments below on this matchup. Let me know your score predictions, all of that down below. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But then again, thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this preview, slap a like on it and subscribe as well if you're not already yet. Really helps out the channel. I'd really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you all in the next one.